Hi, my name is Margo Morton, and this is EDL 853 Special Education. Module 8 was our case study, and the title of the case study was Get This Kid Out of My Classroom, which I found to be very real-world applicable in the world of education. So starting with what do I know? I do know that Susan Green is a new teacher in special education, which in and of itself is a huge hurdle. But now she's working with a teacher that's, they haven't really started off on a good point with their relationship, and that's Nancy Taylor. She's the classroom teacher, and she wants immediate action. She has hit her point of frustration, and she even used the phrase problem kids when describing Carl and other students. That brings us to the next character in this case study, which is the student himself, Carl. And from the case study, I learned that his behavior has escalated in recent months. He is on an IEP, but not for any intellectual reason. He's very sound intellectually. It's just his behavior. He has recently divorced parents, which makes me think that maybe the divorce is causing this recent uptick in escalation problems. And there's definitely a lack of stability at home. Mom is raising the kids, mom is working, dad's out of the picture for the most part, so there's not much stability at home. And I thought a fourth pertinent detail was the fact that there's lack of immediate leadership at the school. Because they're a small district, they have to share a lot of resources, which means the assistant superintendent also doubles as a teacher or vice versa. So that's a shared role, which I found to be a very interesting concept in and of itself. I have quite a few questions for what do I need to know. Unfortunately, about the first 4 or 5 questions I posted, it's kind of too late because they've already made changes to the IEP. But if it were possible to go back in time, or if I was a principal at this school, I would have asked these questions, mostly of the classroom teacher, before any changes were made. I just kind of felt like the IEP and having the meeting and making changes was very, very rushed. I didn't really feel like they took time to do some interventions and to try some different things. I kind of felt like the classroom teacher kind of bullied everyone into just making changes now. So as a future administrator, I would try and slow that down and ask the following questions. I would ask of the classroom teacher, what has she tried in terms of interventions? Also, is there anything that that classroom teacher or just the school has in place in terms of a positive atmosphere? Like, do they do morning meetings? Are there positive interventions in place to help promote good behavior? Furthermore, I'm curious, are these behaviors just happening in the classroom, or are they happening in specials as well, like PE or music? And are they seeing them out on the playground? I think that would be a good information to have on hand. And also, I would ask of the classroom teacher, again, if I could go back in time before making changes to the IEP, I would want to know, where's your data to show that this is an escalating thing? Or is it more just based on feelings at the time and frustration? So I would want to see some data, especially that would support an intervention that's in place to show that you're trying different things before making changes to the IEP. Kind of hitting a different note now for the special education teacher, I'm curious if she has a mentor in the building. And if she doesn't, I think that is pertinent for a first-year teacher to have, just to help support her both professionally and emotionally, because we all know teaching can be very stressful. I'm curious about some of the inside school resources, such as the school counselor and the school psychologist. Is Carl on their radar? Is the counselor able to meet with Carl on a regular basis? And I was curious, if we do have those resources at the school, why weren't they at the IEP? Seems like since Carl's on a behavioral IEP that they are 2 key people that have a lot of knowledge about student behavior. Also, in terms of support, I'm curious if there's any outside community support that we can get Carl and his family, maybe like big brothers or big sisters, maybe some free counseling services. I think that would be very helpful. I'm curious about his older siblings, if there's an escalation in their behavior as well, or if it's just affecting Carl. And I'm wondering if anyone's talked to Carl about his goals. You know, the classroom teacher made the comment that nothing's working, he's not motivated, it doesn't matter to him. Well, that could be the case. Maybe it really doesn't matter to him, but has anyone asked him, hey, what would you like to work for if, we can stay in the classroom all day today, or if we don't have any major meltdowns or anything like that? So I would want to talk to Carl about his goals. So moving on, when looking at what I do know, what I want to know, then coming to what is the problem, I'd say the immediate larger problem is that Carl's behavior is escalating. There's also kind of some other side problems. There's definitely a damaged relationship between the special education teacher and the general education teacher, especially with the final comment that was made as the classroom teacher walked out of the IEP. And I feel that lastly, there's a lack of resources, both at home and school, which would probably be one of the harder problems to tackle. So moving on to category 2, what is my plan? As a principal, I would take the following steps to try and remedy this problem. So I would want to have a private conversation with Ms. Taylor, first and foremost, probably same day as the IEP if possible. Her comment and her behavior is inappropriate, especially to, well, it's not okay anywhere, but especially, to a first-year teacher who already has her hands full, that's just not being very supportive of a fellow colleague. So I'd want to have a talk with Ms. Taylor. I wouldn't want to come across as like a bad cop or anything, but I would maybe handle the meeting more in terms of empowering Ms. Taylor. I'd like to task her with helping Ms. Green, possibly maybe in presenting a professional development together, maybe about classroom management and how to de-escalate students. I think by giving her a task, it gives her a sense of empowerment and kind of maybe a sense of control, which I think right now she's feeling very out of control in her classroom because of Carl's behavior, which is understandable. I've been there. So I would want to definitely have that meeting and try and get that relationship back on the right path. Furthermore, if it's possible in our district, I'd want to have a behavior analyst come in to observe Carl. No one yet in the case study can pinpoint what his trigger is, and I think that's important to know what is triggering it, and then you can start to provide an intervention specifically for that. I want to check into counseling services available for Carl and his family. I think that when Carl is pulled following his new changes to his IEP, I think that the special education teacher should be working on self-regulating strategies with the goal of keeping Carl in the classroom as much as possible. I also think that it's important that goal be created by his classroom teacher, because truly his classroom teacher is with him more than the special education teacher, and the classroom teacher is the person who has to implement the plan. So she really needs to be on board, and I think that should be her conversation to have with Carl. Again, tracking data is huge. We need to know if this is really working or not just based on a gut feeling for the day. I want to follow up with words of affirmation for both teachers. They're both kind of in some low points right now, so providing that positive praise will be helpful. And I want to review school-wide curriculum in regards of creating positive classroom environment, because the case study didn't mention anything about positive interventions, and I think that's huge and important in school. All right, so the strategies that went along with the plan, as I mentioned, by having those two teachers work together, the strategy I'm utilizing is collaboration and also empowerment. Another strategy with coming up with a goal for Carl and having him be a part of it, we're using data collection to make sound decisions. I'm utilizing outside community resources, and I'm also creating a sense of empowerment for Carl. So what is best for students? I'm actually going to pause here because my video limit is coming up on a cutoff. So I'm going to pause and then I'll continue on my next video.